Okay, what is up, guys? And welcome to, I guess you could call it a bonus round of the game time kit for Wind Waker Rando. When I was sailing around, I brought up that there was a creepypasta I read as a kid that I wondered if it still existed. So I looked it up while I was still filming, and yes, it does exist. It absolutely was not deleted. This is the same one. I know it is. I can just feel it. So, I'm going to try and read it. And try not to die too much because my voice just doesn't want to play anymore. Like, it really, really doesn't. Okay, let's get into it. Epona. By a Celtic magician. I sometimes hate Nintendo for making me want to take nostalgia trips into old games. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, still my favourite Zelda game to date, was due to be released for 3DS. I'd constantly fangasm. Why did 9-year-old me read this? Why did 9-year-old me read this? I would constantly fangasm while watching the commercials for it on TV. Wilt thou get the girl, or wilt thou play like one? Then again, they changed that in the commercial, didn't they? They changed that for the 3DS one. Oh my god, fucking hell. Seeing the images related to the game kept making me want to play it more and more. Kept making me eye my old GameCube because I knew I had the game for that system. So did I. That was the first time I ever played it. Eventually, I caved, watching Link being mega awesome on the screen for what seemed like the 100th time. I mean, true, based. Maybe. Oh, by the way, get your stopwatches out. I'm sure that we're gonna have a lot of that. Thank you, Yuri of Wind, for giving me that idea. Maybe want to revisit the land of Hyrule again. So I scuttled upstairs and into my room, where I hauled out the GameCube and hooked it up to my small television set. I then rummaged through my video game drawer until I found and pulled out the case for the Zelda collection. Honestly, that collection is goated. The retrospective is something that I adore on it. It was the first time I ever saw most of those Zelda games. So much adventure. So much more than I ever knew. Anyways, I excitedly popped the disc into my GameCube and booted it up, bouncing in my seat slightly as the system's introduction played on the screen. You know the one. I selected Ocarina of Time from the game menu and couldn't help but smile as the title sequence started to run through. Initially, I had wanted to start a new game, to start fresh and from the beginning. But as I looked at the top file, Link, my previous and completed game, a different feeling overwhelmed me. I wanted to see Epona again. Me too, buddy. But usually when I want to see Epona, I play Twilight Princess. Epona was the cornerstone of my Zelda obsession. Actually, that was true for me too at one point. No, I didn't write this. I promise you, this had nothing to do with me. Though I was never able to actually play Ocarina of Time on the N64 when it first came out, friends who owned the game would allow me to ride around on the famed horse if they weren't too busy trying to beat a dungeon or something. My heart sank a little. I knew I was going to see Epona again if I started a new game, but it would still be a while before I could rescue her from London Ranch in order to ride her again. You mean you don't beat it in the space of an hour, like the first 3 dungeons? Maybe a little bit more to factor in cutscenes? It doesn't take long. In order to ride her again. After some consideration, I decided, what the hey, listen! And selected my old file. I could always start a new adventure later. The game resumed as it should post Ganon, with Link in the Temple of Time. Okay, yeah. Link was wearing the red Goron tunic, which I prefer to the Kokiri green one. Okay, yeah, to be fair, based. It's also the most useful. Like, there is no reason to wear the Kokiri tunic ever again after you get the red one. And equipped with the mirror shield. In the C button area, I had the Lens of Truth, the Ocarina of Time, and Din's Fire selected from my last adventure. But seeing as I was going to be taking a quick jaunt with Epona, I went into my inventory and selected the Fairy Bow to replace my Lens of Truth, just for fun. How is that relevant? How is that relevant? Why would you take out your Fairy Bow? You'll be using it on Epona anyway because it's the B button. Never mind. I'm not going to try and. I'm not even going to try and make logic there. After I was satisfied with my changes, I took control of Link, ran him outside of the Temple of Time into Hyrule Field, probably getting humped by a Redead on the way out. Once there, I stopped a moment to take in the surroundings before pressing the corresponding button for down C to take out the Ocarina. I will say, the first time I ever hit Hyrule Field, that feeling hit different. I just walked around. I loved that. I did. But I digress. I really do. Fiddling with the buttons a bit to figure out which one made what sound. Why would you need to do that? Like, just read your menu screen. Read your menu screen. It'll tell you what to do. It tells you directly what to do. I played Epona's song and gleefully hummed along with the familiar melody. To be fair, I do that too. After the song was finished, I heard a familiar whinny and a cacophony of hooves as Epona came galloping towards Link. In fairness, this is written significantly better than most creepypastas, but in fairness, that's like comparing Pokemon Legends to a Pokemon game, but, you know, we don't need to talk about that. We don't need to talk about that at all. You can tell what's happened today. A wide grin spread across my face. There's my girl, I said softly to the TV screen. Okay, there's a little bit over obsession here. Once Epona slowed to a stop, I moved Link over to her and mounted. It took me a few seconds to get Epona facing the direction I wanted, but as soon as I pressed I and heard Link slap the horse with a quick cry, I was off into my world of bliss. It had been so long. I wanted to ride Epona everywhere I could in the game for as long as I saw fit. After travelling the length of Hyrule for some time, jumping over the fences along the way, I decided to head over to the Gerudo Valley, since I loved how the beat of Epona's hooves matched up with the music there. However, it had been a couple of years since I last played this game, so I was a little lost as to where I was supposed to go. Fake fan. I knew there was a bit of exploring needed. I headed toward the looming rock cliff, which I knew had the entrance to Kokiri Forest somewhere in its midst. I figured as that's... What? Sorry, I spoke too soon about it being well written. I figured that as soon as I found the forest, I'd be able to orient myself in the right direction. But something strange happened along the way. Oh boy. Here we go. This is where the creepypasta part actually starts. Not too long after I had turned to run along the cliffside, a hole appeared below Link and Epona, sending them both into the ground as the screen cut to black. When the game reappeared, Link was standing in a place I had never seen before. The area had no total name and was set at night time. It was walled off and covered in plants and greenery, reflecting hues of orange from the roaring bonfire centre, music, which sounded like that of the minibus battles. Da 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 da. Yeah, Dungeon Dwellers. Okay. But the most notable enemies were something that didn't seem normal to the game. They looked like hiding guards riding on horseback. All of them were white, translucent, and had an ethereal blue glow about them. The only reason I knew they were dangerous was because of Navi, who had cried, "Watch out," and prompted me to lock in on them in yellow. A flurry of whinnies were heard along the music, adding to the chaos of movement around me. I tried moving about, attacking enemies to keep them at bay. How in the world was this even possible? I knew there were set holes scattered around the Hyrule that Link could fall down in order to obtain items and rupees, but nothing like this. For a moment I considered the possibility of a hacked game, but scrapped the idea, knowing that even though I had received a trilogy from a friend prior, I had been playing the game for years without incident. This had to be something else. Okay. Nice job, author. It wasn't long before I noticed Epona in the midst of all the chaos. She was standing near by the fire, rearing and whinnying frequently as though she was in distress. The ethereal guards were circling around her as though they were trying to round her up. That's when something hit Link, making him recoil in pain, as it dealt a good deal of damage. I rounded on whatever was nearby and noticed that it was one of the guards. I locked into it and struck with Link's sword. Much to my surprise, however, the sword did nothing. It just passed right through the character, leaving it unscathed. Damn, there must be some trick to this then. It is a Zelda game after all. I racked my brain for an answer as best I could. Then I remembered Epona. Epona, she must be the key to beating these things and getting out of here. Oh boy. I raced over to where I had seen the horse, taking out a couple of Tektites along the way. Once I approached the surrounded queen, the ethereal guards advanced on me and I knew I had to act fast. Okay, in fairness, this is brilliant. Oh no. But this would be brilliant. This would be a brilliant part of the game. Some badass ethereal guards. Fucking hell. That's brilliant. I love that. No longer bound. I pressed the C button for right C, activating Din's fire, and watched the animation play for the attack. Unfortunately, even though the magic fire did take out a handful of enemies that were within range. Have you not got Nehru's Love? That'll protect you for long enough to get to Epona, I'm sure. Knocking him back. Two of the guards swung their swords at Link, knocking him backwards and completing a total of 5. Damn. You look at this like Master Quest, mate. Then another idea hit me. Perhaps I need to knock the guards off their horses somehow. Eyeing the fairy bow, I got an idea. I charged forward again. This time keeping Link well out of range of the ethereal guards' attacks before readying the bow, locking onto one of them as I did. Once I was confident enough, I took my shot and prayed that this time I was right. I found out very quickly that I was wrong yet again, as I watched the arrows pass right through the guard and hit Epona instead. Oh lord. I sat there, wide-eyed as I saw the flash of impact appear directly on her neck. I then watched in confused horror as Epona reared once more, only this time bursting into flames as she whinnied. Then she collapsed to the ground and faded away like an enemy would after it had been defeated. I paused the game right after this, feeling the blood drain away from my face. Did I just kill Epona? Bit of a history lesson. When I was 9 years old, I read this in the car on the way to a shopping centre on my old Nokia. It wasn't long after this story came out. It was probably 2012, 2013. I don't know. It'd have to be 2012 if it was 9. But yeah, so that happened, and I found this to be quite compelling, this story, to be honest. Back then. But not so much now. I'm taking the piss out of it now. I tried to wrap my mind around it. Link's weapons and attacks should be ineffective on the horse. You could hack and slash at opponent with a master sword all you wanted and it wouldn't do anything. Did you test that? And yet you claim to love Epona. Perplexed and half hoping this whole fiasco was nothing more than an elaborate glitch. Oh, really? I resumed the game and focused my attention on getting out of the unknown area. Unfortunately, the guards had now dispersed from the area where Epona once stood and started heading toward Link. Not knowing what could be used to defeat them, I figured that this would be a good time to start running. There wasn't anywhere to go, really, so to stall on time, I tried everything in my arsenal against strange ethereal enemies. I tried everything. I even shook Deku Nuts at the guards as the last resort. Nothing seemed to work, and if they so much as touched me, they would cause devastating amounts of damage. As the amount of other monsters and replenishing resources diminished, my frustration grew. How was I supposed to get out of this area when I couldn't even leave a scratch on the enemies that were chasing me? Fewer and fewer the defeatable enemies became until there was only one left. A single light which I'd been trying to avoid. Yeah, me too. I hate those things. I sighed as I approached the creature to attack it. I'd been running around for a good 20 minutes now. Stopwatches, everyone! So I was more than ready to give up at this point. However, once I defeated the light, the area froze and a cutscene played. No fucking shit, Sherlock. The ground started to shake and rumble, and everyone's attention, including Link's, turned to the bonfire, which instantly extinguished. For a moment, the shaking stopped. Then something, which appeared to be a horse with a black saddle, burst out of the ground with a fire monster, crying out with a scream of a re-dead. The phantom horse whisked around the area, killing off the ethereal guards in its wake. Then the scene cut to a terrified-looking Link, who took a couple of steps back as the animal approached him. Its body was white and translucent, revealing the skeletal structure underneath. Though it had a tail, the mane for its head was missing, as were its ears. Its skull face bore two black sockets with red pupils in the middle. The last thing I saw of the cutscene was the pulsating image of the horse before the screen turned white and faded to black again. When the game resumed, I found myself in Hyrule Field, and sweet Jesus, the skeletal horse was right beside me. I immediately pulled out my sword and shield to defend myself, but the horse just stood there, looping with the typical animation of the game. Suspicious of the creature, I made Link creep towards it. Much to my surprise, I was able to walk right up to the animal without it doing anything to me. It even gave me the option to climb on when I moved by the saddled area. I leaned forward in my chair and wondered for a moment, could it be? I selected the ocarina and played Epona's song. Sure enough, the phantom horse began to push Link backward like Epona does when you play the song next to her. I sighed with relief. This creature was nothing more than Epona. But how did she come to look like that exactly? Well, maybe it was the fact that you fucking killed her, you dickhead. Like, but how did she come to look like that exactly? Was killing her with an arrow a feature tool to her appearance? Well, it can't have done much for her. I shook my head, figuring I'd just let it be for now. Sure, Epona looked a little spooky, but it was still Epona. If I didn't save anything, it should all go back to normal next time I played the file. Oh, you idiot. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted to test out the Phantom Epona. I admit I wanted to ride the alternate horse, to see if she would function differently. So I saddled back up and took off to find Gerudo Valley once more. Epona seemed to move the way she was supposed to, though the carrot cage was a ghostly shade of blue rather than the normal orange. But it didn't take me long to realise something unusual. Link was taking damage even though there was no enemy around to inflict it. Link also can't take damage on Epona, so don't be an idiot. Eventually I caught on to what it was. It was Epona. She was hurting Link as I rode her. I immediately stopped the horse and dismounted. Link's hearts were low enough as it was after that last ordeal. I didn't need his health to be depleted any further. This aspect of the feature made me really sad though. As cool as it was, I would never be able to ride Epona again if she was in this form. I grumbled bitterly. There goes my fun with riding the skeleton horse. Then I got an idea. I could go replenish my hearts before riding Epona again. I could still make this work. Yeah, sure. But as I headed up to Hyrule to find patches of grass to cut, Epona started to act strangely. No sooner had I left her side than she reared up and let out her redhead cry. Epona then disappeared and reappeared nearby Link, repeating the same sequence as I continued to move away from her. I felt badly as though Luke came to understand why Epona was acting like this. She wanted Link to ride her instead of walking away on his own. This is the fun part. I'm sorry, hon, I whispered to the screen. It's not that I don't want to ride you. It's just that I can't right now. It was like Epona had heard me. As soon as I said it, the horse suddenly appeared in front of Link, but instead of rearing, she stood stationary, forcing Link to mount her. I had no control over the next few seconds as Epona took off with a screaming Link on her back. She ran back to the area where the hole had appeared earlier, damaging Link all the while. Suddenly she jumped into the ground, causing the scene to cut the black like it did before. I was confused. What the hell was going on with this game? When everything reappeared, Link made a noise as though he had landed after falling off a high cliff. He flashed red as he sustained more damage. He was dismounted from Epona once more, the horse a little way to the right of him. Her animation seemed to be on the regular loop again. I realised this was the same nameless area that the bonfire in it prior. Though this time it appeared to be sundown, and there were no enemies in sight. I looked at Link's health gauge. Only a quarter of her heart left. Crap, I thought. I need to replenish his hearts and soon. I took a look around the area to see if I could find anything of use, or even a way out. There appeared to be nothing in this area at all. Nothing that is except for a single ethereal blue bone that lay right by Epona's hooves. Navi brought my attention to it. Based on how the game was playing out so far, I wasn't too keen on attempting to touch the glowing item. Instead, I tried to interact with anything else in my sights. After bouncing off the walls by slashing for a few minutes, I gave in and approached the area where Epona was standing. I stood Link by the mysterious bone and looked at it through his eyes. Was this really the only thing I could interact with? If so, why? I didn't really understand the purpose of it at all. I don't even know how long I was standing there, trying to decide whether or not I should press A. Heck, I don't even know why I didn't clue into the fact that I could just reset the game and be done with all of this. I guess I was just really in the moment. Yeah, why are you stupid? Finally, with a lot of hesitation, I pressed a button. I watched as Link bent down to pick up the item before screaming and bursting into blue flames. The game over music sounded as Link fell down. I can't say I was surprised at this point, as I selected yes when the game asked me if I wanted to continue. Things should go back to the way they were. But things didn't go back to the way they were. That gives me serious, but the wizard did not forget vibes. Honestly, what the fuck? The game resumed as a cutscene in Hyrule Field. The moon rose to trademark howl of a wolf host was heard. The scene then panned over to the field before cutting to a single white arm which burst out of the earth. I then watched in horror as Link proceeded to haul himself out of the ground before the gameplay reverted back to normal. My jaw slapped. What the hell? Link was wearing a white tunic now. The rest of his body was varying shades of grey. Would you say 50? I'm really unfunny, but I don't care. I'm having fun. I'm having some fun. The darkest of which being his gloves, boots, belt, and sheath. What I had really noticed, though, were his eyes, which were black with red dots where his pupils should be, just like Epona's. Link's appearance wasn't the only thing that had changed either. His health meter was completely empty, but all the hearts were surrounded by a distinct white glow. The magic gauge was now blue instead of green. After double checking my inventory, all of Link's items and weapons were shades of white and grey, like he was. It really must be. I can't keep making that joke over and over. Navi also seemed to be missing. I gulped a little. The game had gone from weird to creepy. How is this creepy? Like, this is a little odd. Don't get me wrong, because I know pretty much everything about Ocarina of Time, and this is not in it. But it's not creepy. Like, come on. Grow a backbone. Okay. I sat there, allowing Link to go through his idle animations as I decided what to do next. I wasn't ready to shut the game off yet because you're a dumbass. I wanted to know why all this was happening, let alone what was going to happen next. I took out the ocarina, shuddering a little as I briefly saw Link's blackened eyes before they shut. All I can think of is the Lego skeletons. What the fuck? The ocarina was white now, with rust, or what I hoped was rust. Well, brown is hardly going to be anything else, is it? Well, bronzy brown. Running down from where the holes were. I played Epona's song and cringed as each of the notes shook in a high wail as though I had taken the joystick and messed around with the pictures. When the music sequence played, the pattern that surrounded Link was also white and grey, and the melody continued in its haunting tone. After the song was finished playing, nothing happened. There was no sign of Epona at all. It was as if I was out of range to call her, which made no sense since Link was facing in the direction of Lon Ranch. And also, calling range doesn't become a thing until Breath of the Wild, which hasn't even been revealed yet in your timeline. I thought about it. Maybe the reason Epona wouldn't appear was because I had tried to go to... No, it was because I had to go to Lon Ranch for some reason. Nothing really seemed like a coincidence anymore. I took off in that direction, keeping an eye out for opponents along the way. Sure enough, a couple of wolfers popped out not too long after. Wait, what? Wolfos? There are no opponents in Hyrule as an adult. What? Why would you hit A to slash? Wait, if you were Z targeting, then I guess. Well, L targeting in this case. In fact, Link was able to talk with all the monsters they encountered on Hyrule Field. Why are the monsters on Hyrule Field? Most of them would say things like "Death to Hyrule" or "Hail Ganondorf." Oh, really? But there was the occasional few would say things like, "What are you looking at, kid?" Or would just simply laugh. I found this fact to be both extremely interesting and extremely and unnervingly odd. The creatures wouldn't even pay me notice as I walked past them. It's as if they were reprogrammed out like NPCs. And that unnerved you? I'd just be relieved that I don't have to deal with that bullshit anymore. But halfway toward London Ranch, I noticed another oddity. Wait, if you're facing London Ranch, then why are you... I'm very confused. None of this actually makes any sense. Typical, isn't it, how once they get to the supernatural stuff, they, fuck it up. About half... It was still nighttime in Horrorville, but based on how the passage of time goes in this game, dawn should have broken by now, and this really shocks you. You're a skeleton. It's never going to end well. Into the area wondering what, if anything, was waiting me there. London Ranch seemed normal at first, save for the absence of Malin humming Epona's song like she's supposed to at night. The other thing I noticed when entering the ranch was Ingo, who stood just outside to get to where the horses were. Approaching him, I realised he was fixated in a terrified stance, like he is usually. Both his arms were covering his face. Okay, no. While he stood on one leg, shivering and staring at Link in fear. It appeared as though I could talk to him, so I pressed A, only to be met by Ingo's pleading words which asked Link not to harm him. I thought it was odd for Ingo to be reacting to Link like that. I found myself becoming even more uneasy, and I questioned whether it was a good idea to venture into the fenced-off area next. Curiosity drove me, however, and I entered the ring. The horses were scattered about the interior of the carousel, and seemingly surrounding Malin, who was in the centre. Malin was hunched over and seemed to be convulsing. I realised that she was looping in a crying animation. The horses were whinnying and running away from Link as I approached her. Malin's face was contorted in anguish, or about as much anguish as you can show in an N64 game. I spoke to her. Why? What did you do to my Epona? A shiver went through me as I read her words. I assumed Malin was referring to the Phantom Epona, and I'd forgotten that Link was technically the reason for the horse's death. No shit, Sherlock. With a bit of a heavy heart, I looked about in search of the skeletal horse. To my surprise, Epona was still nowhere to be seen. It made no sense. Epona had to be here. Pulled out my ocarina one last time and played Epona's song in that strange, haunted pitch. Yet again, another cutscene played. Epona appeared from the shadows and ran toward Link. Malin and the other horses moving out of her way as she approached. Unlike the last time, Link didn't back away, but instead greeted the ghostly horse. As he was doing so, the camera moved into a wide-angled shot when Navi emerged from the left corner of the screen. A small verbal cry of "No" was heard from her as a dialogue box appeared saying, "Link." Link turned back to look at the fairy, and Navi swooped in quickly toward him. However, when the fairy was a few inches away, Link raised his hand and swatted her away. Hey! Sorry, I have to speak for most people on the internet here. Under any other circumstance, I probably would have laughed. I'm one of the many fans who have always wanted Link to do that to Navi. But the way he reacted to the fairy in this cutscene seemed cold, emotionless, as though he was trying to force her not to follow him. The feeling of the scene was very heavy to me. Maybe it was because there was no music playing. A couple of seconds passed as Navi was seen tumbling away from Link before regaining herself. Link turned to Epona and lifted himself up into the saddle, taking a moment to adjust. Navi slowly floated forward. Why? Link looked at her a second time. His eyes were both piercing and yet somewhat forlorn at the same time. I felt a chilling sense of sorrow rising within me. About a minute passed before stopwatch. Before Link turned his gaze forward again, letting out a cry as he urged Epona onward. Galloping out of London Ranch as Navi, Malin and Ingo watched almost helplessly as he left. Not too long after, Navi zoomed towards where Link had disappeared, stopping just short of the ranch's gate. Link! Oh boy. Within the next couple of minutes of inactivity from the characters, a realisation crossed my mind. Link and Epona were gone. They wouldn't be coming back. But there was still more to the cutscene. An unseen character spoke. It seems that the boy has finally made his choice. Navi and the others turned around, revealing the presence of Ganondorf. He stood with a smirk on his face and his arms crossed over his chest. It looks like it's the end for all of you then. And with that, he threw his head back in a horrible laugh, one that was more sinister than I remembered. Ganon's laugh continued, echoing into the night air as the scene cut back to Link and Epona, who slowly disappeared from sight as the sun began to rise. The screen then faded to black as the words, "The End," appeared in white on the screen. The title sequence of the game started up again. I stared at it for a while in shock. I really wasn't sure what to make of what I had seen. I rose from my seat and shut off the GameCube. I still haven't found an answer for what I experienced that day. I've tried looking up any sort of hack or glitch to explain what happened. Dumbass. I even found my friend who told me that he bought a new copy of the game before giving it to me. Yeah, and you trust him? Whatever this was, one thing was for certain. What occurred in my game seemed to outline a close bond between Link and Epona. The connection was so strong that Link gave his own life to stay with his beloved horse instead of saving Hyrule. I checked my old save file again to see if there was any evidence of what had transpired. Just as I suspected, since I didn't have saved the game during an event, everything was back to normal. However, on closer inspection, something caught my eye which made my blood run cold. There, on the down C option, was the image of a white ocarina. Oh dear Lord. Yeah, no, I don't really want to read this. Yeah, there's some art that comes with it. You see, those aren't several shades of grey, that is just white, with a little bit of dark shadow. That's still just white. Well, there you have it, folks. That was, something quite interesting. That was Epona. And I don't know why I thought that was a clever thing to show off today. Yeah. I don't know how to feel about that. Doesn't really hold up from my childhood, but I didn't really expect it to. I'm going to leave things here. Have a good day, guys, and I will see you guys next time. And I don't think I'm going to be doing more Creepypasta readings anytime soon, but I might one day read a couple of them. See you around, guys.